Video game stat line is one way to put it. Stupidly efficient is another way to put it. Everybody, this is Wade, and you're listening to the Totally Biased Sports Podcast. No, Meyer and Tyler have not been kicked off the podcast for having terrible opinions. It's just Thanksgiving week. Unfortunately, we were not able to meet up and record all together this week due to scheduling conflicts overall. But I'm the one with the audio equipment, thankfully, so I'm going to be able to put out a show for you this week. And that's how it really should be, because, I won the picks last week, so... Now, we do have a very interesting week to get into, obviously. We got some pretty big deals happening this past week, including a Tennessee loss, which I'm sure everyone is here to listen to, and a lot of other really tight, close games that were fun to watch, as well as some upcoming matchups in the upcoming week. I think that everyone are excited about Rivalry Week here at the Totally Biased Sports Podcast. And yeah, we're just going to hop right on into it. So, first off, we're going to go ahead and cover the best of the rest game. And, well, I'm the only one here, so I guess I'm the only one that's got a pick for the best of the rest game. For me, it's Navy UCF very, very easily. This game was just wacky. Navy did not throw the ball. They threw it one time. What's funny is the Navy's quarterback had a QBR of 15.5 still, which I find to be quite funny, that he attempted one pass, didn't complete it, and still had a QBR of 15.5. But Navy was able to move the ball through the rushing game. They had 248 yards on the ground on 63 carries and averaged about 4 yards a rush. Just a weird, really, really weird game. UCF had their quarterback get hurt, John Rice Plumlee. He was doing pretty good in this game, and then they put in Miles Keene. I knew he was having some injury issues this year, so that's why he went out and kind of assumed that was it. Probably not the best thing for me to do, but yeah, Navy just ran the ball and showed you can still win football games, just sort of beating the crap out of people up front, which Navy did pretty much all game on the defensive side of the ball too. Looked pretty daggum good as far as that all kind of goes. Even coming through, I think they had 5 sacks on the day. One of their players had 4. John Marshall had 4 sacks on the day. Yeah, just an awesome, weird day for the midshipmen, and just a fun game that if you haven't, I would go just check out the stat line for it, because it is a treat, genuinely. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get into the next segment here. We're going to look at surprisingly bad, and this is going to be not the first time we talk about the University of Tennessee, but that defensive performance was horrendous. Hard to watch is the way I would describe it. It was like no matter what they did, the middle of the field always seemed to be open. Spencer Rattler played a really, really solid game, even though... this may be like a bias in me speaking for Tennessee, and obviously against, the fact that we did lose. I don't see how people like Spencer Rattler, man. He seems like a really annoying guy to be around. What I will say though is he did play really good, so he can back it up at the very least. I think he had over 450 passing yards. Obviously, that South Carolina offense was on full display against this Tennessee defense, which looked terrible. After a couple of games of looking pretty good. Now, they didn't look good against Missouri last week, and that was a little bit concerning because that Missouri offense isn't necessarily world beaters. But they had looked pretty good against Kentucky. They looked pretty good against Georgia, all things considered. Even though Georgia did start running the ball there later in the game, that Tennessee defense didn't play that bad in the early part of that game. They were able to force a fumble early. Just kind of back and forth on whether or not they were good going into that South Carolina game. And we pretty well proved that Tennessee defense is not very good. Missing Jeremy Banks in this game was really, really horrible, and it's just unfortunate, I think, for Tennessee's season to get kind of squandered like that. That defense just it's tough to say it's really 100% their fault. Offense played not really great either, but it's hard to really get mad at them when they didn't really have the ball very much. It kind of is what it is at the same time, but that Tennessee defense just did not live up to standards, I don't think, this week. All right, we're going to go ahead and get to take of the week this week. LSU versus USC. Who's in? Now, I know if I was talking to Tyler and Meyer, I do know a little bit of their opinions on LSU and mine as well. Tyler personally thinks LSU, with the loss to Tennessee, is in with a victory over Georgia. I think Meyer is also in agreement. The way the college football playoff is set up now, yeah. But here's the thing. I don't think they're going to win against Georgia. I think it's tough, right? Who do I think is a better team and who do I think is in are two different questions. And I think Meyer and Tyler would both agree with that as well. I think LSU is probably the better team right now, in my personal opinion. And I know that's a bit of a tough argument to really say, especially with how good Caleb Williams looked last week. But I don't know. I still have a pretty good confidence in this LSU team. I think that LSU defense can still shut down a lot of different football teams. And I think that USC does kind of get by with I don't want to say not playing anybody, because UCLA was a team they definitely had to play, and they were a good team, don't get me wrong. But I think the issue more lies in the fact that USC is a very on and off team. They've been on and off all year. And my big worry for them is that against a team like LSU, the offense wouldn't be able to put up as many points as it needed to put up, and the defense is fine for USC. Physical football teams like Utah have kind of put them in their place in the past, and I think that's what's so kind of like concerning for me personally, is that unwillingness to play a very physical game. And I hate kind of saying that, because I think USC's offense is obviously extremely productive, but you look at the more physical teams they've played, they haven't really been able to put up the same numbers they have against other teams. Oregon State, for example, Utah, for example, even though they did put up 42 against Utah, so maybe that's not quite fair to them. This is a very good offense, don't get me wrong. USC can definitely go and put up some points. My big kind of issue, I think, with them against LSU is that LSU does have a very, very good quarterback, and we saw Dorian Thompson-Robinson do a lot against USC in their game, obviously. And I think that you look at LSU, you'd see something similar happen, except I think Jalen Daniels takes better care of the football than Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Robinson had 3 picks in this game that were really, really big, where I don't think Jalen Daniels has those picks. And I think he just overall plays a kind of cleaner game of football. So anyways, at the end of the day, though, I think it is probably going to end up being USC that's in. If not, in my opinion, I think the loser of Michigan-Ohio State now has a very good argument to get in over, because you have one loss, and it's to either, Michigan or Ohio State. So I don't really know. It's going to be a very interesting game to kind of sort of pick who's going to win between those two teams. But yeah, take of the week wise, I'm looking at LSU as the better team, but USC more likely to get into the playoff. All right, on to the next segment. We're going to be taking a victory lap, or at least I'm going to be taking a victory lap. I'm the only person here, so yeah, I'm sure glad I picked really good last week. I'm going to be taking a victory lap on Ole Miss Arkansas. I had Arkansas upsetting Ole Miss in this game. Something feels off about this Ole Miss team, man. They felt off last week, coming off the Alabama loss. Honestly, I thought that Arkansas played really good against LSU, given that KJ Jefferson didn't play. He comes back in this game, has a QBR of 97, and puts up 47 yards on the ground for Arkansas. Not even to mention Raheem Sanders, who basically looked like the best running back in the SEC this week, against who's probably the best running back in the SEC this week, Keyshawn Judkins. Now, what I will say, though, is that very unfortunately, Mississippi's, or not Mississippi State, Ole Miss had 463 yards rushing. They were insane in the running game. Problem is, they fumbled the ball twice. They lost both of them. And Jackson Dart threw for a pick and didn't really play a very good game. His stats are actually look like pretty good. You look at his yards, 240. He averaged 6.7 yards per attempt. I guess his QBR isn't great at 36.4, but his QBR is pretty indicative of how he played. He did not look very good in this game. I was not impressed at all by Jackson Dart. On the contrary, I was very impressed with KJ Jefferson. Played a really, really good game here. And, yeah, I think Arkansas is a better team. I'm glad the beer truck got a win. Like, that's massive for that program. I didn't know if they were going to be able to come back after they got the beer truck. But just a massive, massive win for that Arkansas team. I'm very glad they were able to pull it out. Very glad for not only my victory lap purposes, but also just because I like Arkansas. They're goofy. They're Razorbacks, which is a sick mascot also. I do want to get that out there. And, yes, that's going to be the victory lap segment. We're going very fast through this review show. I guess I think we're going to kind of probably end up combining the review and preview shows this week because it is just me, and so I don't really have the people to bounce off of, nor the kind of, I guess, lengthening purposes conversation to kind of have. Yeah, so we're going to get into the biased game of the week. Get into the first one here. Tennessee versus South Carolina. Obviously, this is a game that I'm sure everybody wants us to talk about. Everybody wants us to have an opinion about. Here's the thing. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way because I am a Tennessee fan and I am biased. And here's what I'm going to say. The Tennessee defense played terrible in this game. Looked awful. They could not stop a paper fly. It was genuinely a horrifying attempt at trying to stop a team. And this is where I want to go on a bit of a rant about Tennessee's defensive style and about very aggressive defensive styles in general. I don't think they work. That's the bottom line. They are all in, and they're either going to do very, very good or they're going to look absolutely terrible. And that's what Tennessee's defense does. And my rant against these defenses is not based on the fact that I never think they should be used, right? I think every sort of system in kind of football has a purpose, right? Very aggressive defenses should not be used with really, really good offenses. And here's why. Because when you're so aggressive as a defense, games like this can happen, where the other opposing offense is just too much. I mean, Spencer Rattler's over here throwing to wide receivers that are all by themselves, right? And a lot of that has to do with a lot of miscommunication. And there's rumors among the Tennessee defense that there was not as much unity as you might think. But here's the thing. Regardless of what you say matters as a defensive unit, you got to be able to tackle and you got to be able to cover people. Tennessee couldn't do either of those in this game. It's funny. It's funny, really. The fact that Tennessee, really the only thing that happened in this game that was surprising by any means was Jalen Hyatt really got contained by that South Carolina defense pretty well. He still had 65 yards, but this was kind of supposed to be his big comeback game, and it wasn't. Tennessee did a really good job of containing him. Or not Tennessee, sorry. South Carolina did a good job of containing him. But he had a lot of drops, too, as well. Squirrel Wright was actually the leading receiver in this game, who, outside of having a sick name, is also a really, really, really talented receiver. I do want to talk about, unfortunately, the Hendon Hooker injury. For Tennessee, that's crushing. There would be no more fitting way to end that night, I think, than having Hendon Hooker get injured. Just for how awful everything kind of ended up being. It was really, really sad to kind of see him go down because he had fought, obviously, so hard to get that program where it was at. Tennessee owes these past 2 years to Hendon Hooker. They owe this ride to college football playoff contention to Hendon Hooker. and it's unfortunate to see him go down, especially because I we're gonna probably at some point do draft content on this channel as well. I like him a lot as a draft prospect as well, and obviously you could say I have a little bit of bias because I am a Tennessee fan, but in terms of a floor prospect, he's a guy that you can kind of step in, and I think he's very similar to like Desmond Ridder last year. I don't think Desmond Ritter's ever going to be a like top 15, 10 quarterback in the league. Maybe at best, I think Hendon Hooker's a little bit better, just because I think his athletic upside is more than Desmond Ritter's was. Ritter was slightly less athletic, I think, than Hendon Hooker, and didn't quite have the kind of deep ball accuracy that Hooker has. But in terms of a pure prospect and like an NFL perspective, this is very, very depressing for Hendon Hooker, and I hope he's doing well. Genuinely, it's still go Vols here on this podcast. You're not going to ever catch us not supporting our boys, but man, I hope he's doing well, genuinely, and I do wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully it doesn't affect his draft stock too much. Yeah, just prayers up for Hendon Hooker, man. It is a really kind of tragic situation, what's going on with him. That being said, Joe Milton comes in now, and it's his team. I'm kind of looking forward for Tennessee. I do think Joe Milton can take over this team and end up being a pretty good quarterback here, but it's unfortunate the way he has to come in, right? I think the emotions definitely affected him in the back half of that game. He wasn't playing, even though he didn't play bad by any means. It did definitely affect him, and you could tell. It's going to be interesting to watch him play, I guess, in the bowl game and against Vanderbilt next week. But I'm rooting for Joe Milton, if for no other reason than that he can come in and help his roommate out, because him and Hooker are roommates and very close friends. So, yeah. I guess we'll look at it here from the South Carolina perspective. Shane Beamer, man. As much as I really think that South Carolina looked kind of unbearably cocky at parts in this game, I did not really like seeing them. I didn't really like seeing them do some of the things that they did. Now, obviously, we lost and lost pretty embarrassingly, so I think that's definitely something you can say. Well, that's just on you. But I did. I don't know, man. Spencer Rattler had an awesome game. I'm gonna sing his praises first. Spencer Rattler had an amazing game. If he had more games like this at Oklahoma, he would still be there, or he'd be at USC right now with Lincoln Riley. He showed why he's a 5-star. He's a fantastic player. When he puts up games like this, he's unstoppable. Bottom line, he was carving up that Tennessee defense. Even though in a lot of ways he was throwing to open areas, he still hit those throws. That has to be definitely credited to him. But man, I will just go ahead and get this out there because it is going to be this is a biased sports podcast, so get ready for some bias, I guess. Spencer Rattler is a really annoying quarterback to watch. Even when he's doing good like this, he has this air about him that's a very, I guess, Baker Mayfield-esque in college, where it's just like, is it exciting to watch because it's a little bit like it's a little bit like rude, and it's I guess pompous is a good word for it. Yes, it is by every sort of definition of the word. It's an exciting kind of thing to watch, but I don't know. He comes across very, very, I guess, full of himself, and I don't really like that. What I will say is that South Carolina was thriving off that energy, and the people in the stadiums were thriving off that energy, and South Carolina looked unbeatable in this game. They put up 63 points. You know, you can't really argue with the results that they got out of that. So shout out to Spencer Rattler, man. He played his heart out, but yeah, I don't know. I find him hard to root for personally. What I will give full credit to is Jaheim Bell. Played really good in this game. I know he only has like a 4.8 yard average on 17 carries, but he really was a lot of this kind of offense. He was really good out of the backfield, I thought. Was pretty good at running the ball. Now, so was obviously, I don't know how to say his first name. His last name is Brown. He's a wideout, but he got a couple carries in this game, looked really good as well. There was a package that South Carolina had early in this game with DeCarrion Joyner, I think is his name. It's escaping me right now. I think it's DeCarrion Joyner. Anyways, and honestly, that looked really, really good for South Carolina. They were handing the ball off out of that package and having a lot of kind of success out of that. What I will say, as far as the receiving game goes, awesome game out of Antoine Wells. He played really, really well. Also, I can't stop singing kind of the praises of the South Carolina team. But at the same time, I will say it came against a defense that looked atrocious. Tennessee defense did not look like it could stop a fly this week. And I don't think it's indicative of who they are as a talent and as a defensive group, but I think it may be indicative of sort of problems within defensive structure. I don't think Tennessee needs to play the super aggressive defense. They can sit back a little bit more. They can play a little bit more conservative, in my opinion, because it's not like you need to take the ball away and go run up the score on people. Tennessee's going to score points, right? 38 points is not nothing. 38 points beats a lot of teams. You just can't let up 63. And the sort of really hyper-aggressive style defense can do that, whereas more conservative style defenses, things that play a lot more cover 4, defenses that will sit back and kind of cover 2 shells, defenses that focus less on trying to create turnovers and focus more on trying to force teams into long drives, I think are really kind of smart. For when you have such a good offense, why not use it, in my opinion? Now, with that being said, that is obviously I'm not qualified, but dadgum, it's kind of annoying to watch because this team deserves better than that defensive performance that was put on last week, and that's all I'm gonna say. Next up, we're gonna get into the Michigan-Illinois game. That's the next biased game of the week. This one's tough, man. In my opinion, Illinois kind of did get screwed in this game. As much as I do kind of hate to say it, golly, why am I blanking on the coach's name? It's escaping me right now. But he had a point about the referees really, really having a weird game against Michigan. They were calling some stuff that shouldn't be called. They were calling a lot of things that probably should not have been called. It was just not pretty, bottom line. Illinois played this game really, really tight. They honestly shut down that Michigan offense for kind of the majority of that third quarter. I hated to see them lose, honestly. Let me get to the point here. Tommy DeVito had a pretty good passing game. This wasn't a crazy barn burner of an offensive game. I think he passed a lot better than his stats show. Even his QBR, I thought he played a pretty efficient game. Didn't really miss a whole lot of throws, which I think is a really big deal for Illinois. Obviously, when you're on the road, it does become a lot more difficult to kind of play that. They didn't turn the ball over in spite of a fumble, and that Illinois defense did play really, really well overall. What I will say, however, Michigan did not play super great on offense this game. Blake Corum got handed the ball a lot, was actually pretty efficient in this game. J.J. McCarthy played kind of honestly bad in this game. I don't really know what to say about him because with Blake Corum out now, it's going to be scary for this Michigan team next week, and that's what I think is so kind of frightening against Ohio State. What I will say, though, is that it did look like in a majority of this game, Michigan's offense was shut down by Illinois. And I don't know. I don't know if J.J. McCarthy can lead this team into a playoff kind of confidently, if you will. He's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, and it's not like Michigan doesn't have other talent at the running back position, but it's just Blake Corum has been a lot of that team's rushing game this year. And as much as I think CJ Stokes is a really good running back and also averaging about like 5.5 yards per attempt against top 25, I think is the stat. He's been really, really good this year too. But Corum's been your workhorse, man, and it's going to be so hard to lose him and then have to lean on J.J. McCarthy because games like this will happen, right? Illinois is a great defensive team. I even said so last week. I said I thought we were sleeping on this Illinois defense. This is a good group, and it's a team that wants to run the ball, kind of eat clock, and it reminds me very similar to a team in the SEC East that's currently ranked number 1 that really likes to eat clock and also has a very good passing game to boot. Yeah, I don't know, man. Michigan looked really rough this week, and the fact that Blake Corum got hurt, I think really hurts their playoff chances. It's sad for Michigan again. I think the Blake Corum injury, obviously, I think it's in less severity as the Hendon Hooker injury, but that is a huge loss for this Michigan team. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cover TCU Baylor. Because how could you not? An insane game. You look at the kind of everything that happened in this game, right? Baylor is in like total control. All right. In my opinion, they looked pretty dominant in the fourth quarter of this game, which is when it matters, and it was so huge for TCU to win this game and find a way to win this game. In my opinion, I don't think TCU is all that great. I think that they're going to find a way to lose one of these upcoming games, but they're a fun team to watch and they're a fun team to root for. I just love these Horned Frogs, man. They are so interesting. Max Duggan actually played pretty good in this game, I will say. But it was a weird game because I felt like both offenses were playing pretty good, and then they were just go through spurts where they weren't playing really good all of a sudden. It was odd. Both offenses were doing it too. I think the primary reason for it was the turnovers. TCU had I knew Max Duggan threw a pick. I knew Baylor threw a pick. Baylor I think fumbled the ball out of bounds, but. Anyways, there was some turnovers that happened in this game, and I think that had a little bit to do with the weird on again off again nature of the offenses in this game. But overall, they ended up playing pretty well. I mean, 29-28 is quite a bit of points. I was surprised that TCU couldn't get the rushing game going, like at all. Whereas Baylor got a lot of the rushing game going. I think they ran it 46 times. They were really sort of eating clock. On similar passing attempts, Baylor had a lot more kind of time eaten up. And you kind of just... if you're Baylor, man, this is a kind of a game to hang your hat on a little bit. Because you possess the ball for about like almost 8 minutes more than TCU. You had a lot more rushing yards. You were an overall kind of a better defense, in my opinion, for most of this game. And I mean, it was a very clean game too, with very little penalties, which I think played into kind of Baylor's favor at home. But yeah, anyways, TCU Baylor was a crazy game. I'm glad TCU won, man. I'm rooting for them, and I hope they end up making the college football playoff. I don't know. They're a wacky team. They're a wacky team, and I don't feel like they're gonna quite be able to pull it off, unfortunately. But yeah, I guess last things last. We'll cover the USC UCLA game. I wanted to tack on the TCU Baylor game because it was so much fun to watch. I don't even think I don't even think I mentioned the Michigan kicker making that final kick, which as much hype as they were putting on him, you'd think it was like a 50-yarder. It was like, it was fine. It was a good kick. I'm glad he did it for Michigan's sake, but like it was fine. Anyways, not to crap on the kicker, but weird game. Yeah, next up we're gonna get into USC UCLA. USC just honestly outlasted UCLA. Like that's the only way I can really think about it. Really good games in my opinion, out of obviously Caleb Williams, and despite the 3 picks, Dorian Thompson Robinson, he is so DTR is so dynamic, I think. The problem is that he doesn't really know what he's doing, and I think that's why you run into a lot of issues with him in the sort of very, very kind of technical aspects of football. Athletically, he is great, right? He sort of is Caleb Williams if Caleb Williams never fully adapted to kind of learning the offensive style that he was put in. DTR, man, the 3 picks, unfortunately, is what did UCLA in this game. They had 204 yards rushing. They were honestly really, really good in the run game. But you turn the ball over 4 times, it's hard to win football games. Bottom line. Even though I think UCLA honestly outplayed basically USC in everything but the kind of, I guess you could say, turnover department. USC and Caleb Williams did have a very, very good game, and did definitely deserve to win this game given all the turnovers. I think that my big concern for USC now in the playoff, which I think is where they're going to end up. Now they do have to play Notre Dame this week, and obviously they got to play in the Pac-12 championship game, which is going to be a fight. But assuming they make it to the playoff, my biggest problem with this USC team is again physicality. And I'm afraid almost everybody in the playoff is going to have some level of physicality to them. Georgia, obviously, is going to want to hit. Ohio State, they're not afraid to get physical either. Now, that's probably is their best kind of matchup. Whereas if they were matched up against like TCU or Michigan, I don't think it's particularly close. Unfortunately, in the physicality department, that is. What I will say, though, USC did have a really good game on offense. Caleb Williams, I think, definitely cemented his place in the Heisman race. Speaking of Caleb Williams, he's my biased baller of the week this week. To get on to our next segment, video game stat line is one way to put it. Stupidly efficient is another way to put it. 32 of 43, 470 yards. QBR of 87.3. Caleb Williams was outstanding. Looked in a lot of ways comfortable in this passing game, in a way that he hasn't before. And I get he's had really good stat lines before, but he looked a different level of comfortable. And if you were to tell me USC won the national championship this year, their X factor would be Caleb Williams, and I don't think it's even kind of close, or even a debate in that sort of situation. The next kind of pick I have is Raheem Sanders from Arkansas. Let me get his kind of numbers pull up here. Here they are, right here. Raheem Sanders, 232 yards rushing, an average of 9.7, 3 touchdowns. And he had a long run in this game, too. I think of about 70 yards, 68, what I have written down. Man, he dominated in this game. Him and KJ Jefferson both had really, really good games. Arkansas offense had a really good game, put up 42. But, man, again, Raheem Sanders played an outstanding game. I was very excited to sort of see him have a good game. I was a little bit worried about this Arkansas offense last week, but this week they ended up kind of making up for, I guess, those worries. And Raheem Sanders ended up making up a lot for those worries. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and get into my playoff picks here. Unfortunately, again, Tyler and Meyer not with us, so it's just going to be me this week. You're going to get to hear my wild ramblings. And I think what happened, what I said last week, still kind of stands, except I don't have TCU anymore. I do think they're going to lose at this point. I'm just, I don't know. I got a weird feeling. I hope they don't, because I actually am rooting for TCU, but something's weird about them. Something doesn't quite feel right, and I feel like they're not going to be able to kind of end the season on the same note they started. I think it's going to be Georgia, Ohio State, USC, and Michigan. USC being the new team. I think Georgia does beat LSU, despite some kind of weird things people are saying that maybe LSU is going to destroy Georgia. I saw a weird take on Instagram the other day that was like, LSU's defense can definitely shut down this Georgia offense. And I was like, we thought the Tennessee offense was going to destroy Georgia's defense, and we saw where that went. I think Ohio State's going to win the Ohio State-Michigan matchup as of right now. I guess my opinion can't really change considering it's this week. But I guess I gave away my pick for that game. But yeah, Ohio State just looks like the more complete team. Even in their kind of close game against Maryland, which I did say they were kind of going to have. I felt like Ohio State was due a kind of close game. And it was really genuinely close. A kind of garbage time, or not garbage time, but there was an interception when Ohio State was already ahead. They ended up getting returned for a touchdown, which put them up by a larger score than I think they would be up by. Even with that being said, I still think Ohio State just matches up with that Michigan team very, very difficultly. That doesn't sound right. They match up with that Michigan team in a way that I think Michigan can't really handle, and I think it's going to be very hard for them to deal with. That being said, I think USC kind of feels that spot Michigan will leave vacant. USC looked awesome this past week on offense, as they have pretty much all year. My biggest concern is still with that USC defense and the fact that they do have to play a very tough schedule. Here's the thing, though. If USC wins, they're in. I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind. If USC wins, they're in, no questions asked. It is what it is at that point. The battle becomes at the 4 spot, which I think in the scenario I've worked out becomes a battle between Michigan, Clemson, and unfortunately for basically anybody that's a decently active college football fan, Alabama. And I think Michigan kind of edges out both of those teams. Clemson has not played anybody. They lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has looked kind of eh. I don't know. I just think Michigan will have the edge despite having a very weak out-of-conference schedule. Just because I think at that point you have to look at them as a team that they faced all comers, right? They won the games that they had to win, whereas Alabama has the road loss against LSU and a loss against Tennessee, which does obviously look worse now. And I think that you also look at that Michigan team as like they lost one game and it was to Ohio State, right? And the way I have it sort of playing out is that game is still pretty close, and I think if it is close, I think Michigan gets in. If Clemson gets in, I will say I think it will be a travesty because I don't think Clemson holds a shot. What I will say though, if Corum, which I hope Corum gets healthy for Michigan against Georgia, I feel like that is a little bit of a closer game than maybe USC Georgia, which I just think USC matches up very, very poorly with Georgia. Georgia has the corners to shut down USC's receivers. I would love to see the matchup of Keely Ringo, Jordan Addison. That would be awesome. And as good as I think Caleb Williams is, I think that Georgia defense is better. But anyhow, those are my playoff picks as of right now. And the Heisman pick for me right now is C.J. Stroud. He had a pretty good game against Maryland this past week. I think with Hooker hurt, unfortunately, it is just C.J. Stroud. now and kind of everybody else. For Hooker's sake, I do still hope he gets kind of honored at the Heisman ceremony because incredible season, and to go out in an injury like the way he did, just it really does suck for him. I think my personal pick right now, I do think CJ wins it, but I hope Caleb Williams wins it. He's a fascinating player to me, and I think that he definitely could win it. I think very, very reasonably. I do like Caleb Williams quite a lot, and he's obviously had a very good season as well. All right, so with all that being done, that was the preview show. We're going to go ahead and get into the that was the review show. We're going to get into the preview show this week. And it's going to be kind of a simple format this week. Just kind of going to talk about the 10 games we have picked for this week. We have Ole Miss versus Mississippi State. That's the first game we're picking this week. Ole Miss is a -2.5 favorite in this game, and I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to pick Mississippi State. I don't know. I think that Ole Miss loss against Arkansas was pretty indicative. I think Lane Kiffin very well might be leaving Ole Miss for Auburn. He had a coaches meeting with just his players, and as a head coach, he's a homie hopper. That's how I would describe him. He's a homie hopper. Now, with that being said, I think this Ole Miss team is kind of on the downturn. I think they've lost a lot of the momentum they had in the middle part of this year, and I think Mississippi State takes advantage of it. I think Mike Leach obviously is one of the better coaches in college football, and I think he finds a way to take care of a business there at home against Ole Miss. Next up, I do want to go ahead and get into Meyer and Tyler's picks because that is something I actually do have on hand here. Tyler is picking Ole Miss this week, kind of citing that Ole Miss run game as a majority of the reason. And Meyer is saying Hail State and picking the Bulldogs as he just feels that passing game is going to be too much for Ole Miss to kind of deal with this week. Next up, we have Wazoo, Washington versus Washington State. Man, what a fun football game this is every single year. I love watching the Apple Cup, I think is what it's called. I don't know what it is about Washington State and Washington, but they always play some ridiculous football. And I love watching them play. Here is the deal, right, about this game. I think Michael Penix balls out, all right? And as much as I think that he is in the sort of, oh man, I'm about to say it, and I hate saying it, he's in the mix for the Heisman. I think he balls out and has a game where he definitely shows he should be like in that conversation. I don't think he'll win it, but I do really think he will kind of show out, have himself a really good game. And so I'm going to pick Washington to win this one. Meyer picking Washington State. Washington is a 2.5 point favorite here. I think Washington will cover that spread. They'll win by at least a field goal. Whereas Tyler is picking just Washington outright, same as me. So next up, we're going to be talking about the Auburn-Alabama game. Bama is a 21.5 point favorite in that game. That's a lot of points. Bama had a weird game against Austin Peay. I think they put up 38 points, which is less than you'd expect from a Nick Saban team against Austin Peay. But here's the deal, right? I still think it's a Nick Saban coach team. I think he's going to motivate his guys by saying, if you win this game, there's a world in which you still find a way in the playoff, right? And I think that Alabama knows this is also Bryce Young's last game here in Tuscaloosa. and they want to send him home with a win, if you will. I think Bama wins big. I can see this being a 28-point game. I'm hoping Bama wins big, even though the Iron Bowl does seem to be close every single year. The Iron Bowl is always close. Iron Bowl is always close. I think I'm going with Auburn. I think I'm going to switch up. I think I'm going to go Auburn in this game. Just a ridiculous set of circumstances always happens in the Iron Bowl. I think Myers, Auburn, definitely has me believing in that as well. Next game we're going to pick South Carolina versus Clemson. Very, very interesting. Both of my podcast mates here are picking Clemson to cover the 14.5 point spread. I am going to say this out front. I am biased, but I think South Carolina capitalized off of some momentum. It's a big Tennessee game, big win. I think Spencer Rattler may have himself another good game, unfortunately. I do not like seeing him braggadocious, but I think he will be in this one as well. I think South Carolina keeps it close. Maybe even wins this game. I think it is a lot tighter than 14.5, though. And for those reasons, I am 1,000% going with SC. Not the real USC, but the other USC. Tulane versus Cincinnati. With the UCF loss, this is kind of the game that determines who makes it into the New Year's Six Bowl. And I think it's going to be Tulane that wins this one. Meyer and Tyler are both in agreement with me here. Actually, no, Meyer is not in agreement. He picked Cincinnati over Tulane, which, I mean, Luke Fickell obviously has himself quite the reputation there at Cincinnati, and I think he's looking to uphold it. But Tulane's a really good team, man. I like them to cover this 2-point spread against Cincinnati. I like them to win outright. And I get Vegas trusting Cincinnati a little bit more. They've been in these situations, but man, it just feels hard to doubt this Tulane team this year. It seems like the Green Waves year, as stupid as that mascot is. I did sort of crap on Tulane in their stadium last week, but you know what? Go Tulane. I hope they're doing good. Next up, we got Notre Dame versus USC. I'm picking USC in this game all the way. I think Notre Dame has a chance against USC because they are a very physical team and they play defense. And I mean, Oregon State gave this USC team troubles, and I do try to remember that. But man, I mean, this is a weird week. It feels like a week where Notre Dame goes out and beats USC. I think that's my issue. It just feels like that kind of week. But I'm not going to let that get to me. I'm going to pick USC to win this game by at least a touchdown. I think they're going to cover that 5-point spread. And I think they're going to cruise to a win in this one. Next up, we got Georgia Tech versus Georgia. Now, this is a 36-point spread, which is gargantuan, but not out of the ballpark in what ends up happening in the Georgia Tech Cincinnati games. Now, what is very interesting, I do want to point this out. I don't think I talked about it last for the Notre Dame USC game. Both Meyer and Tyler are picking Notre Dame to cover in that one. And as well as picking Georgia Tech to cover in the Georgia Tech-Georgia game. I am in agreement. Georgia Tech's coming off a very big momentum game, and Georgia's offense looked honestly not bad. That Kentucky defense looked really good against Georgia last week. I just don't think Georgia puts up enough points in this game to be 36-point favorites. I think they may put up 42, but I think Georgia Tech's going to score a touchdown. They may score 2. this Georgia Tech offense is not inept. They are not great, but man, they're not this bad of a team. Not 36-point underdog kind of quality. I'm gonna kind of pick Tech in this one, as both Meyer and Tyler are doing as well. Next up, we got Florida versus Florida State. Florida coming off of a wacky, weird loss to Vanderbilt last week. Florida State keeps looking better and better, honestly. I think in a lot of ways, Florida State, 9.5-point favorites in this one. I think Florida State doesn't quite have the game we're expecting them to have. I think Florida covers in this one. And it's mostly because this rivalry is really, really intense and seems to be close every single year. But at the same time, it's also because I think Anthony Richardson has hit a different gear. People might have forgotten because they lost to Vanderbilt. Anthony Richardson threw for 400 yards in that game. All right, that does not need to be go overlooked. And that's 2 back-to-back really solid games he's put together. And so I think he has another good one in this one. I can see Florida winning this game at Florida State, which is a tough place to play. Don't get me wrong, and it is a night game. But yeah, I think Florida does find a way to win this one. All right, so now we're going to get into the 2 biased games of the week, kind of picks for us. First off, as per usual, we got Tennessee versus Vanderbilt. And there's a lot to talk about in this game, right? There's so many kind of points you can kind of look at for Tennessee, and I think you can find a lot of ways to pick Vanderbilt in this game, right? Here's what I'm going to say, all right? I think losing Hendon Hooker is very, very detrimental to this team. And it stinks, and it's hard, but I think that Tennessee takes that as a sort of reason to go out and play hard. And I think Josh Heupel gets this team excited and ready to play hard against Vanderbilt. Even though, obviously, they are now out of the college football playoff picture. I see them going out and playing really hard in this game, beating this Vanderbilt team, which has looked a lot better in the past 2 weeks, and keeping Vanderbilt from a bowl game as God intended. Yeah, I got Tennessee winning in this one by more than 2 touchdowns. I think they're going to maybe end up... I'll give you the final score on this one. I know y'all like your final scores. I'm going to go Tennessee 45, Vanderbilt 24. I just kind of... That feels like about right. Joe Milton, I want to get this out there. If you think Joe Milton's a bad quarterback, watch this game. He has consistently performed really, really well as a backup for Tennessee. And frankly, I think he'll play really good in this one as well. I think they'll bounce back off of a pretty rough week, obviously, last week. To be fair, it is a night game that is away. And when Tennessee has played those, which is the one game they played against South Carolina, they let up 63 points. So maybe not the best looking game on the docket for Tennessee. I will pick them nonetheless, though. Michigan, Ohio State. Here's the game. All right. It's the game to decide who gets in the playoff. Even though I think the stakes are unfortunately lessened because Tennessee did lose, I think that it's still going to be a hell of a game. I'm excited to watch CJ Stroud and this Ohio State offense, in my opinion, go crazy in this game. That Michigan defense is pretty good, don't get me wrong, but I think they're going to find a way to put up a lot of points in this game very, very quickly. I think this one might be closer than some people expect. Ohio State is a 7.5-point favorite. And I did say earlier in this pod, I thought it was going to be a close win. And so you'd think that would mean I would pick Michigan to cover. I think I'm going to kind of play the game here, though. Meyer and Tyler both take Michigan to cover. Oh, by the way, Myron Tyler also took Vanderbilt to cover as well, the 14.5 point spread. But I'm going to go with Ohio State. Kind of being a little bit of a gamer here because I do think it's going to be a close game. I just got to do something to differentiate myself a little bit. I think maybe Ohio State's able to kind of get a late score like they've been able to get in some of these games and pull away a little bit more than is actually indicative of how the game really went. So I'm going to pick Ohio State in spite of me thinking it will be a pretty close game. To kind of be a little bit of a gamer here, trying to one-up Meyer and Tyler here. There's a lot of conviction. I do have a lot of conviction that Michigan will play good in this game. I will say that. They will not look bad enough to kind of keep them fully out of the playoff picture. I think Ohio State, however, finds a way to kind of beat this team by more than 7.5. I think they find a way. Maybe it's an 8-point win. Maybe it's a late field goal that kind of puts them over the edge, where Michigan now has to go for a touchdown or nothing sort of deal. Yeah, that's really it. That's the pod for this week, man. We're actually sitting just under an hour here, so when I obviously chop it all up, which you're not going to see, but whatever, we're going to have ourselves a pretty good pod. So, yeah, hopefully my voice is not too grating. I know it's just me this week, so it's not a whole lot of variety. But, yeah, we should have Meyer and Tyler on for Conference Championship Week, as well as the bowl game shows as well. Obviously, it was such a great kind of a time hanging out and talking with them. We do want to keep kind of doing that. But yeah, I'm covering for them all this week. Hopefully, though, we'll be able to get back together, record some of this kind of all in one place next time. So, yeah, this has been the Totally Biased Sports Podcast, and I got one thing to say, and that's go Vols.